Yeah.
Still doesn't. I mean, right now, well, I used to do TV.
Yeah.
Now, I need to
We need one of those on-air lights. Like,
yes,
yes,
I mean,
yes.
yeah.
Sometimes you forget. I mean,
Got it?
I see Sue, Jess, Mike, Lori. Who else is missing? Oh, is that Joe?
Is that Joe?
Yep.
Okay.
So is that everybody?
Once we get the new board
I
members,
know, there's no way to turn it a little,
permanent.
or is that out room?
I might leave yours up, I might leave yours.
Wait, you guys can, I think you move down too.
And then you can take it.
Well, so you can see if
Wrong
it's
one. Heard right.
No, that's
I'll
just-
You can switch the name,
I think that's
you sure? Can you guys see Mary and Jean?
well, they can probably.
Joe,
because the
or
camera's
Lori,
right
can
there.
you see Mary and Jean? I would guess it's enough.
Been there.
The camera's there, but we just can't see that.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
That's okay, I can see them okay now.
This one's. Ready to start?
Yep, great start.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to call to order the Regional School District 8 Board of Education regular meeting for Monday, November 15, 2021. I don't know if it's going to last.
I can pick up for you.
Okay.
Need me to take over, just stay.
Sorry.
Wanna do it?
Sure.
Okay, why don't we start with the roll call? Next to me is Kathleen Goodman. I'll let her say her voice and Jessica Wade.
Yeah.
Mary, why don't we start with you?
Mary Kuchevsky, Marlboro.
Jean Wilson, Laura.
Rob Shell from Beaver.
Scott Leslie, acting superintendent.
Eva Gallup, business manager.
Eric Shevchenko, Manitoba.
Ron Ackland here. And we'll go online. Joe? Joe, I think you're muted. Eric, are you hearing me? Let's try Mike Morris. Yep. And we're not hearing you. It looks like your voice should be picked up, but so we're gonna have to work on that technical glitch. Sue? Can you fix that? Eric? We're working on the sound. Hold on one sec. So you're
I'm gonna leave the meeting and come back.
okay. Are they all gonna stay there? Try again. Okay, let's try roll call again for those of you online. Joe?
Joe O'Connor, Hebron.
Perfect. Mike?
Mike Morris from Hebron.
Great. Sue?
Sue Stelty from Marlboro.
Jessica?
Jessica Dapsis, Hebron.
Lori?
Lori Blake, Andover.
Great, thank you. Any other board members online? And I know we have a couple of administrators. Christine?
Christine Harwick, Director of People Services.
Penny, I think I saw you.
Penny Briscoe, high school principal.
Thank you. Any other administrators online?
Kristen Small, Supervisor of People Services.
And in person?
Michael Cerusi, middle school principal.
Great. Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there any request to add or delete agenda? I'm sorry, public comments. I'll read the notice of public comments for Kathleen. Hebron, Andover, and Marlborough community engagement and attendance at Board of Ed public meetings is welcome. The public comment segment of the meeting agenda is set aside so the Board of Ed may receive public comments. Procedurally, public remarks will be limited to 3 minutes, and citizens will be asked to identify themselves. Because the Board of Ed is limited by the Freedom of Information Act to discussing only matters on the agenda, the Board of Ed is not permitted to engage in a discussion of the comments presented. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment? Raise your hand. Okay. Move on to the next agenda item. Are there any board members who would like to add or delete an agenda item? Okay. We'll move on to student reports. Lily?
Good evening, everyone. Nice to see you again. Homecoming was about a couple weeks ago, I think, 2 weeks ago now, and it was supposed to be outside, but it was moved inside. And I think everyone's really happy about that. Outside would have been a little chilly, and inside, everyone, there was a ton of space. We had the atrium, cafeteria, and the aux gym, and people were able to spread out and have a lot more fun, I think, inside. Fall sports are pretty much over now, except for cheer and football. I think they go till Thanksgiving. Liam Calhoun, however, just raced in Vermont. He broke a 30-year-old school record for the cross-country record. I don't know what it is now, but he broke it. And he was the first student in 25 years to win the state open, which was held in Denver on Saturday. Really nice course up there. And then for seniors, people who applied for early action, which is typically November 1st, but it could also be November 15th, are starting to find out where they got into college. So that's pretty exciting. Also a little nerve-wracking, but I guess it sort of comes with the territory. And then quarter one just ended, so that means seniors are sort of halfway through the year, because after semester one closes out, for those of you who don't know, our class ranks and our GPAs are solidified. And then last but not least, volleyball are moving up to the semifinals. We beat South Windsor in the quarterfinals on Saturday. It was a really good game. And now they're playing some team in New Britain on Wednesday. So that's pretty exciting.
Okay. Lily, can I add a little trivia to your comments?
Sure.
So Liam Calhoun, in fact, did break a 30-year-old record in cross country, and the coach for Michael Judenis, who had the record 30 years ago, was Mark Logan. Mark Logan is still coaching the team and coached Liam. I don't anticipate it's going to take another 30 years for a RHAM student to break that record, nor do I expect Mr. Logan to still be with us coaching 30 years from now, but nonetheless, quite a run. Ron?
Okay, so well, I just want to talk about something that basically stems from one of my wellness classes. It's called a nutrition wellness class at the high school. So we did a project where we could propose new classes and basically get feedback on them and discuss what classes would be good at the high school and what classes we would like to potentially bring back. And there were a lot of presentations about family consumer science class, and there was a lot of interest in potentially bringing that back, and I think that that's something that could potentially students could like thrive in. It could help obviously develop their skills with cooking and stuff like that, and I feel like that's a useful class that we brought back. And another class that could potentially be introduced that we have interest in introducing is a driving course or driving classes, because it's common for people to go to like Glastonbury now these days to go take those driving courses, and I feel like if Hebron had an option through some electives at RHAM to help them with driving, it could prove beneficial to the students.
Great, thanks.
I agree. I'm gonna be trapped with that student group.
Kathleen, I can't do the next for you, so you're
I
gonna
know.
have to do
I'll
that.
try, and as long as you don't make fun of me. I had to do announcements at my school this way today. It was very interesting. So good evening, everyone. Just wanted to have some closing remarks. This is my last Board of Education meeting, and I regret, leaving the board, but it's for the right reasons. I have 2 kids at home. I've got to take care of that part. But I just want to overall just thank, first of all, the administration and the staff, and of course the people who sit and give up time, for the Board of Education meetings every month. I've enjoyed being a member of the RHAM Board of Education. It was a privilege to be elected, to volunteer, and to support the students, staff, and administration of this school district. A great deal has occurred over the past 4 years. I'd be hard-pressed to say that COVID was not truly a test of all of our perseverance, and certainly created new challenges for all of us. As an educator, I empathize. Our students have been impacted by the lack of consistent educational opportunities and activities, like proms and sporting events that make high school memorable. Not to mention the toll the pandemic has taken on some students' overall well-being and mental health. I hope that the faculty of RHAM will continue to be flexible and committed in their support for students as they recover from this. Certainly, our focus is our student community, but also to the staff that are returning to a classroom. Despite best efforts to continue on, I am sure that some staff have their own personal struggles as they return to the hallways of RHAM Middle and High School. I want you to know I sincerely have appreciated your efforts on behalf of our young learners. Your endurance and willingness to put your own needs aside for our students does not go unnoticed. I'd like to congratulate the current Board of Education members for being supportive, for respectfully disagreeing when you felt it necessary, and for your service to our RHAM community. The Facilities Subcommittee was very active with new windows, the DOP project, and the changes made to the parking lot, upgrades that met ADA compliance, and of course the turf project. I'm disappointed that the vote did not support this project, and the Board of Education will now have to deal with ways to fix this issue in the future. And Joe O'Connor, I know that hits a personal note for you especially. For negotiations, I hope that we did our best to show support to our staff through well thought out contracts. The Board of Education also reviewed and updated new policies, worked with AVA and the business department to provide a transparent budget process, and most importantly, discussed and supported curriculum changes and resources for our students. These discussions were my favorite part of being a Board of Education member. There are still things left to do, such as hiring a new separate superintendent to be the successor, Mr. Leslie. These are big shoes to fill for sure. Mr. Leslie has done a remarkable job as superintendent. He has made it easy for me to be the Board of Education chair, and I appreciate his guidance. The board will also have to fix and revise the strategic plan and discuss what actions need to be taken to fix the athletic field, maybe hopefully adding lights, bleachers, and even a press or announcer's box. For our new members, congratulations. You've been elected to be part of a great school community. Your leadership matters. Please remember that each person brings something to the table. As I have learned, the position of board chair is important. Having an open mind, remembering that there are experts within the school, and being a good listener with good questions is the only way to keep the school district moving forward. Leadership has very little to do with longevity. It is about purpose. If you are here for the students and staff of the school, then your heart is in the right place. Never forget, it is about them. It is not about you and whatever platform you ran on. Be kind and continue to provide the best you can for our students and staff. Thank you for the amazing privilege I have been given. Best of luck to all of you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Well, and my remarks are going to pick up, I think, where Kathleen left off, in that we do have 4 board members who will be leaving us this evening. So I'd like to focus my remarks this month on that. First of all, I would like to express what a pleasure it has been working with each of the 4 RHAM Board of Education members we are honoring tonight. Each of the 4 board members I will be speaking for have done a remarkable job of supporting our students, families, teachers, and staff members, and have each made significant contributions to RHAM. On behalf of the entire RHAM community, it is my honor to thank Rob Shattle, Jean Wilson, Kathleen Goodwin, and Joe O'Connor for the years of service to the RHAM community. Volunteering your time and energy in the best of times and doing it well can be a significant challenge. Volunteering your service and devoting countless hours of time during a pandemic and doing it well is nothing short of remarkable. Each of these board members rose to the occasion and did not skip a beat in ensuring that RHAM students, our families, and our teachers and staff members have the resources necessary to continue schooling during the pandemic and to then stage a successful return to in-person learning at the beginning of this school year. So Rob Shattle. Rob, thank you for your focus on common sense solutions and your commitment to speaking up when you saw a problem to be solved. Rob brought a significant amount of expertise in facilities maintenance and made significant contribution to the district's capital programs, the DOT project, and our many field projects. Rob's commitment to common sense, practical solutions to difficult problems has served our students well while providing tremendous value to each member of our community. The entire Shattle family has a long and stellar history of RHAM, and Rob, you did them all proud.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Congratulations, Rob.
I'd like to say that I was delivering a gold bullion from the district's vaults, but they really are quite lovely plaques. So, Jean? An effective Board of Education needs to look at all sides of an issue before making decisions that impact so many people within our communities. Jean, your thoughtful questions help to guide the board through the very challenging issues we have grappled with over the last few years. Your encouragement to look at all sides of each issue helped us all make the best possible decisions during your tenure on the board. Your unwavering support for ensuring all students receive the best possible education contributed to the success of each of these students. Thank you.
Congratulations, Jean.
Kathleen Goodwin. As superintendent, working well with each Board of Education member is critical to the success of our students and our schools. I feel blessed to have had the opportunity to work so closely and so well with Kathleen over this past year to help guide RHAM and our community through some incredibly challenging times. Our return to in-person learning has certainly been challenging, but working closely with the board under Kathleen's leadership has allowed us to navigate successfully through the challenges of this past year. Kathleen's deep knowledge and expertise in the field of education made sure that we always put our students front and center with each decision. Thank you, Kathleen. Joe O'Connor. Joe began his service to the RHAM board in 2013. Over the course of his years on the board, Joe has had a profound impact on RHAM. Joe represents the classic tale of a citizen who sees a problem and then successfully commits themselves to fixing it. When Joe was first elected to the board, the district had fallen short of fully supporting the maintenance needs of our buildings, and in the fields we ask our athletes to practice and compete on. Joe championed the development and maintenance of the district's capital budget. I wish I could show you all pictures of our campus prior to Joe's tenure on the board compared to the amazing and beautifully maintained facility we all currently enjoy. Joe's emphasis on ensuring that RHAM has the funding, the resources, and the personnel necessary to adequately maintain and repair our facility has benefited every student, teacher, coach, staff member, and family at RHAM. But please do not think that Joe is just about facilities. Throughout his tenure on the board, Joe has also been a tireless advocate for ensuring our students have the learning resources they need and that our teachers have the supplies and tools necessary to ensure the success of all of our students. Joe, on behalf of the entire community, thank you for your service.
Congratulations to all the other members. Thank you for your service.
I know how proud Joe is of his contribution, and I know how much he likes to take a drive through RHAM to admire the conditions. So the next drive through, Joe, you owe me a stop by the office, and I'll be happy to give this to you in person.
I apologize for not being here tonight, but I will do that. Thank you, Scott.
Look forward to seeing you. Okay.
We're on the consent agenda. Approval of minutes from October 18th, 2021. Enclosure 8.1.
We have a motion for the approval of the minutes from October 18th, 2021.
So moved. Sue Stalfing.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Second?
This is Jessica, I'll second.
Okay. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor? We'll go down, starting with Mary.
I have to abstain because I haven't had a chance to do that.
Okay.
I probably should too, sorry.
Okay.
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
And Joe?
Aye.
Great. And I think that's everyone, correct? Okay. Okay, so the minutes pass. The next agenda item, I'm both very proud and happy to announce, but also very sad to announce that we have a resignation letter from Sam Shattle, who many of you have heard over the last few years her expound upon our wonderful CTE program, our career and technical education program that Sam has done so much to make vital and to provide students with a constant and changing opportunity to gain additional career and college experiences. Most notably, Sam has done a remarkable job of putting RHAM front and center in the movement to provide at-school training through our manufacturing program and providing an opportunity for our seniors to get training here at RHAM while still a student and put them in a wonderful position to leave RHAM with a career offer from some of the most prestigious manufacturers in the state, including local manufacturers to the large manufacturers like Pratt & Whitney and Electric Boat. Sam, the work that Sam has completed is nothing short than spectacular. But unfortunate for us, that work doesn't go unnoticed. And so Sam, I don't think is necessarily leaving RHAM, but she is entering a new phase of her career and will be working in a very well-deserved position at Pratt & Whitney, where I'm sure she will do an absolutely spectacular job. So we look forward to a continued connection and work with Sam as she represents Pratt, and we continue to train and send kids in their direction. So the recommendation is that the board accepts RHAM's letter of resignation. I have a motion.
Motion with regret.
Thank you, Kathleen. Second?
I'll second that.
Mike Morse?
Seconded by Joe. With regret.
Yes. Any discussion?
It's a loss for us, but I'm very excited for us.
Very much so. So I think in person, we can, all those in favor, if you raise your hand, if you're in person. Okay, and Mike?
Just for the record, what if we say no?
Then I've got to deal with the guy sitting 2 chairs down from me after the meeting, I'm afraid.
He's gone anyway.
I know where you live, Morris.
So is that a no, Mike, or?
Yes, and thank you.
Lori?
Yes, and thank you and best of luck.
Jessica?
Yes, and Sammy will absolutely be missed. You opened the doors for so many students and really changed their future, so you've done amazing work there.
Sue?
Yes.
And Joe?
Yes, and to echo everybody else, Sam, it's been a great career at RHAM. You've done so much. And people who don't know, the grants you wrote and the monies that you brought into RHAM were phenomenal. So you will be sorely missed. But good luck in your future endeavors at Pratt. Thank you for your service.
Okay, we have no old business to cover this evening. We'll go to new business. Discussion on and action on contracting with a new organization to facilitate the hiring of the new superintendent. So I had to inform the board, sadly, a few weeks ago that, well, let me take a step back just to give everyone the history. When RHAM embarked on the journey to hire a new superintendent back in 2020, we interviewed 3 firms that assist boards in the search for a new superintendent, and the board chose Joe Arardi to lead that search. And Joe, you may remember, he started the process. He reached out to different constituents within the community and did some surveying to identify the characteristics that the community was most interested in. And it was decided at some point that I would remain on for another year and Joe would put the process on hold and then pick it up again right around this time of this year. Joe met with the board in September to lay out the time frame. The time frame was that the position would be advertised on December 1st with interviews in January and the hope for a appointment in February for a July 1st start. Most superintendents need to give at least 90 days notice, so that the timing, that time frame will. Sad to say that Joe has since learned that he's facing some serious health issues and has had to pull out of all of his professional obligations. When Joe notified me of that, he suggested that the work be picked up by another firm led by Chip DeMay, who Joe works closely with. Chip is the executive director of one of the rest in the lower western portion of the state. Chip was actually one of the candidates that interviewed for the position back in 2020. So the board has a decision to make, and there's basically 2 ways to go on this, I think. And there are benefits and pitfalls to each decision. One would be to allow me to enter into contract with Chip and he would pick up where Joe left off. But there's, the benefits of that is that the process would proceed in the same timeline. Chip comes recommended by Joe. He's actually picking up Joe's courses at Central Connecticut State University as well, so Joe has a lot of trust in Chip's work. certainly the downside of that is back in 2020, the board didn't choose Chip at the time. And in some ways, the board loses the opportunity to be fully engaged in that decision-making process of who is going to lead that search. So there's a downside to that. The other option would be to start the process anew and go out and open up the process for proposals and start that process again of choosing somebody else to pick up. The benefit there is that the board has full control, and you'll have an opportunity to see who's interested and make sure that that choice, of your first choice, is the board's choice. The downside on that is that you lose a lot of time on that, and then probably put us back far enough where we wouldn't have a new permanent superintendent at the beginning of the next school year. I think there's also a challenge is that we may lose some of the best candidates who tend to be out there now. I mean, now is when most districts are advertising. So, so the board has a difficult decision to make. Move forward with Chip. Again, someone who's a colleague of Joe's, and I think would be able to pick up right where Joe left off. Again, though, there is that option. I want to make sure that everyone does fully understand that there is another option, and that would be to start the process again. We'll open the floor to discussions, comments.
I have a question or comment. So, one of Joe's huge selling points to me was he was only taking on us and possibly another board. Do we know what Chip's current workload is?
So I don't know that answer, and I don't know if he references that in the materials that I shared with you earlier today. I know I updated the materials. I'm not sure if he reflects on that.
Yeah. So and with my next statement, for the life of me, I remember, I think it was our first meeting back in the school, and we were all masked, and we interviewed the candidates at that point. I can't put a name, a face to the name, unfortunately. I would love to meet with him. I don't know how quickly we could meet, have him answer some of, I have, some questions. I'd like to hear his spiel again. I don't know if we can do that somewhat quickly, and then determine if we are comfortable and just choose to hire him, or if we need to, do a further search. That's my thoughts on this.
And Sue, I know that Chip is available tomorrow evening.
Yep.
At 7 o'clock.
Yeah, that's on my calendar. I think it's
Yeah.
on all of our calendars, right? Yes.
And I scheduled that just because I wanted, the time crunch we're working on is that if the board does decide to move forward and stay to the same time frame, one of the new Connecticut laws is that when you post a position, you need to at least have a salary available to candidates should they ask. So, that means that a meeting has to take place with the board and whoever is facilitating that process before December 1st, which is obviously coming up quickly. So I scheduled that meeting for that purpose if, in fact, we move forward with Chip this evening. I think the challenge of using that as another opportunity to interview Chip is that we haven't posted that meeting, because it would be a non-meeting if it's just to talk about superintendent salary. But if it was to kind of re-interview, then we'd have to post it as a regular meeting. So we wouldn't be able.
Special.
Yeah, we'd have to, because it has to be posted 24 hours in advance, so I have to find other available. You know, when I reached out to Chip and asked him what his availability was, tomorrow night was the date that he'd given me. So I can certainly reach out to him and ask him if he has other dates available. Lord?
Thank you. As I'm looking at his letter and remembering from the interview, and Sue, I don't know if this helps, but he was a very dynamic, kind of larger than life individual. He moved around a lot, he had a strong voice, he connected, he seemed like an extreme extrovert. So I don't know if that helps jog your memory at all, but
It does. I remember that, yes, now I do, and I you know,
Yeah.
Okay.
And I agree that what was nice about Joe was that he seemed to be grassroots almost, you know, and had lots of connections, and we would be his main focus. As I'm reading Chip's letter, it does say that this search would be led by a team of individuals at CES. So I don't know if that helps you or anyone who's thinking about moving ahead. You know, if you like the fact that there would be people available to us probably at any point in time, but they may not be the same individual all the time. You know, so Chip may not be available, but someone in his team certainly sounds like will be available consistently throughout this project. So I don't know if that helps as you think about it. I think that, in my opinion, I thought he was also very well prepared. I think it speaks a lot if Scott, you said he's taking over Joe's coursework at CCSU.
Correct.
Right, and they seem to run in similar circles. And they did both talk about the story interviewing, and which I really liked and thought was really an excellent option for the interview process. So I personally just want to put out there that I would feel comfortable working with Chip, and what I would be concerned about is getting ourselves in a time crunch on the board of trying to re-interview or have other folks, and then, as Scott indicated, potentially missing out on hiring the right person and the best person in time for the new school year. I did have a question though, Scott, because I apologize, I did not get a chance to look up Joe's information before the meeting. Just looking at the cost proposal, do you know if there's a significant difference between, not the option 1 for the traditional interviews, but Chip's option 2 for the guided storytelling versus Joe's proposal package?
So Chip has agreed to basically take over the process at the same cost, that the same amount of funding that's left to pay for Joe. I think Joe had contracted for about $10,000, and we already had paid him about $3,500 for his first year of service. Chip has agreed to pick up and kind of finish where Joe had left off at the same cost that Joe was going to be charging us. Short of any other, incidentals that we couldn't predict, but it would essentially be the same amount. It would be a discount amount.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you.
I'm wondering, Scott, too, one of the reasons that we like Joe is the personal effect that I think Lori is alluding to, is because CES is a group, is it possible to ask him? If it's not going to be him, who might be on that team? So the Board of Education has the opportunity to talk directly to just one person, or no, it's going to be multiple people because they're taking over as it wasn't something that was planned. You know, I'm sure they'll make their best effort, but it would be helpful. And I think we would prefer, well, I'm not going to be here, but I'll be watching. I liked Joe's grassroots style, as you alluded to, Lori, and I think the personalization that we're getting from one person as opposed to a company or a risk.
Yeah, I think that's definitely key. And another part is how many schools are they working with? You know, so whatever team they say that will be assigned to us, how many searches are they doing?
Are there any other questions for Scott regarding the superintendent's?
Kathleen, this is Joe. Is there a third option available to us?
There really isn't, Joe, because we need somebody to facilitate the process. And because we haven't interviewed anyone else or haven't had a chance to meet them, there's not another third party that I could pull in. I mean, I guess there would be. I could go to Cade and say, hey, would you guys, but I think you're going to have the same questions that you would about Chip, in that we don't know those folks, and it would be, similar to what we're doing with Chip and hiring an organization that we haven't had any interaction with. Whereas Chip, at least I know some members of the board have met him and seen him when he did his presentation.
Have the applicants, since we postponed, because we postponed it, is there applicants in the pool right now? Is that my understanding?
There are some applicants that were interested in 2020 and that are still interested. I can share that I actually received a phone call from one today asking for the status of our search, and most specifically because there's an opening close by in one of our neighboring districts. And their question is, I'd love to hold out for RHAM, but not knowing when and if the position will be open, I know that there's an opening nearby, and so they wanted to know, should I put all my eggs into that basket, or is RHAM still an option for me? That's just one person, but I would venture to guess that this is a very attractive position, and that those that were interested in 2020 may very well still be interested in, but I think there'd also be a new crew of folks that weren't working then that are now that would also be very interested.
I think it goes both ways, because I knew people that were interested when we first put it out, and I have some colleagues that called me, and a couple of them have already moved on and gotten other jobs, and that would be the case no matter what. I mean, it's just kind of the timing of it. And I think there's some really good candidates out there, and they're going to apply in some other districts no matter what. It's just really a timing issue for the board at this point. If you want to move forward, or if you want to consider other options for the process. The other thing is, Scott, if it's elongated for whatever reason, you're retired no matter what. So it would be an interim.
Correct.
Yes. So that would be another.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the tone that way, I didn't hear.
I'm sorry. Unfortunately, Scott is retiring. So if the board delays, for good reasons, I would suspect you're not doing it for anything else, but no matter whatever the delay is, Mr. Leslie is retiring, so when he leaves, and if there is no potential replacement at that point, the district would then have an interim, and then would have another transition. I'm sure the board is part of that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not saying let's delay anything. I agree with the timeline and the urgency behind this. I just would love to just hear, the question of what's the team working on? Is it going to be the same consistent team? Who is the board going to be working directly with? There's still some questions that I think I would like answered.
And I think
So Sue, are you saying that you would, oh, I'm sorry, Kathleen.
No, go Lord.
Okay. Sue, are you saying that you would like those answers before we finalize a move forward with CHIP, or just
Yeah, oh,
you
yes.
would recommend moving forward, but that's like an introductory, let's have that meeting and find out those answers ASAP? Which one are you suggesting?
I guess I would like to know the answers to the questions first, but of course, majority rules, so, it is what it is, but that's my opinion on that.
Scott, what do we have to do tonight? What is the charge with this? Do we have to make a decision about moving forward with CHIP and vote on that, or?
We do need to make a decision tonight. So if the decision is, I think you can entertain a motion to move forward with CHIP. And if in fact you do that, I think I would ask the board to hold the non-meeting tomorrow to discuss the salary, setting the salary, so we're set to go first thing. If you would rather hold off on making a final decision tonight and have an opportunity to meet with CHIP, then what I would need to do is reach out to CHIP this evening to see what his availability would be between now and I would say Thanksgiving, and we would, giving me enough time to be able to notice a meeting, post a meeting, so we could have a meeting with CHIP, and we could ask the questions and move forward, and then I still think you could do that and still
Have the meeting tomorrow.
make the early December. I don't think you can do tomorrow, Sue, just because I can't post the meeting 24 hours in advance.
No, I mean, the meeting that's on the books for tomorrow, we could still proceed ahead with that meeting to set the salary, correct?
Well, my concern there is if I'm not able to tell Chip we're moving forward with his services, he may be reluctant to meet with the board to review, you know what I'm saying? He may feel, you haven't contracted with me yet, so I'm reluctant to begin the work.
Okay.
Because I was, doing online education during COVID, and that took me away from your evening meetings, I was not there, so I can't weigh in. I wouldn't feel safe weighing in on any of these people. But the timeline does sound like a compelling. I would hope that we didn't start July 1st without a superintendent in place. That sounds like a pretty high risk factor to me.
But if we did try to schedule a meeting with Chip from now until Thanksgiving, we can ask the questions, have him meet with us, ask the questions, we can still meet the timeline, correct?
I think so, Sue, absolutely. Because I think we would, I think that as long as the board members are willing to be flexible enough to meet when he's available. So, it could be an 8 o'clock meeting. It might be something out of the range of our typical time. And then, we would just need to make sure that we are able to do a quick non-meeting so that we can have the discussion regarding salary.
So we could have the meeting with him and then vote on the salary at the same time.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, okay. And one more thing, Jessica, and we can do this all remotely to make it very convenient for everyone if it is an 8 o'clock meeting or something like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Jessica, sorry.
Yeah, no. I think that just sounds like it would give peace of mind to some of the members, and then also allow some of the new members, soon-to-be new members, an opportunity to also be involved in the process without delaying things.
But can the new members really be involved because they're not officially seen?
Yeah, no.
And they can attend.
Well, they can, of course. They should be able to attend and attend as a public member, which is nice too, because then they'll be able to, see them. But just they wouldn't be there to
participate. But at least here.
Yeah, Jessica, I do agree because there were a few of us. I wasn't here when you interviewed either, so I haven't met Chip. So I know Virginia said she was, so it would be helpful. I think.
Sure. Okay.
So just a question, do you have to have a quorum for that?
Yes, because there's going to be a vote.
we would need at least 6 members for that.
So as long as there's 6 members available, I can tell you we have something every night this week. So,
Unfortunately, yeah, I'm, you know, even though I'm pushing for this, I have a board meeting on Thursday, so I am busy this week too. But when Scott set up until Thanksgiving, we still have Monday, Tuesday, and, you know, Wednesday of next week as well.
I don't think I'll be available next Wednesday.
Okay, well, Monday or Tuesday?
Can I ask whether the board members would entertain like a meeting on a Friday night or even a weekend?
Yes.
Yes, I think Sue, and Jessica and Lori, Mary, for those that are part of the board, if the 6 people, are there 6? Right? Okay, Eric? If the 6 people who are most, you need to know who you're working with. I think if the 6 of you can make it a commitment with Scott, it's more important than the rest of us who might not be there. I don't want it to be held up, but I want to guarantee that you have that opportunity as long as 6 people can commit to that. And Scott doesn't give up a night to try to organize this, you know.
Yeah, a Friday or weekend, that definitely works too. It's not going to take any longer than an hour max, in my opinion.
I would agree. I think because you really want to have this conversation with them, and you know I think you have some pretty clear-cut questions. I think you'll get answers to those pretty quickly, and then you know you'll get a sense. Some of you will remember maybe having interviewed him already, and you know you'll get a sense of who he is and what he's all about. So.
Just his picture kind of reminded me. Sue, did you see his picture? Just kind of, if you look at his picture, I kind of remember him up in the front. He was a dynamic individual, I recall. But definitely he wasn't our first choice, so I think it's a good reason for you, you know, to consider just meeting with him again. If it can happen.
If we can preserve the timeline, I think that.
Yes.
That's important.
And I go back with 6 people, should be the 6 people who are going forward with the process.
The only thing I would ask is if we're, you know, at that crunch time and the only people that are available are some of those of you that are leaving, I would ask that just give me 6 people.
Right, I think the point is to have it, but I'm saying like that if the commitment is for those people who are gonna work with him to be there, then that should be the commitment. Certainly, if we're available, we would pop in to support the meeting, but that's not the purpose, you know.
And if you need quorum, definitely.
Yes.
Understood.
Any other questions?
Kathleen, Joe, maybe I just don't understand, and it'll be obviously for the new members as well, but what is, when I say the alternative, it sounds like, is to go out and get a new firm. What is the timing on doing that? And again, Scott's kind of hit some of the wickets about the downfall of it, but realistically, what are we looking at timing if the board can't agree that this gentleman Chip is the right person to carry forward with the search? What's the timing going to look like? Is we talking February, March?
Yeah, well, just to walk through that, Joe, it's a great question because you know first of all the board would have to make a motion, so that wouldn't happen tonight, I assume. So we're probably talking about if the board tells me sometime between now and let's say the beginning of December, we would have to post a request for proposals. You post it for at least a month or so. You've got the holiday season in there, so that's going to push you into January before you even get the proposals. Then you're going to be interviewing, so you have to set up interviews in January to interview the firms that do submit proposals. So you're likely looking at some time in mid to late January before you have made that decision. And now you're going to be talking about their process and whether they're willing to pick up where Joe left off or start the whole process new because they may do something a little different. So you may not actually be posting the position until, I'm going to say probably sometime in March, remember, February is full of budget meetings, and so there's not a lot of time to do much more than just focus on the budget there. So you're probably posting the position in March, interviewing in April. If you appoint somebody in April or May, you know, you wouldn't have somebody there to start in July 1st. You'd be looking at probably September 1st before somebody can start. So it does push off the process by a few months.
And it also, like you said, I believe there's other firms out there now searching for superintendents, there's openings, so that helps, that doesn't hurt, that doesn't help the board to try to get the, hopefully, the best candidates either. The pool would probably be tapped down a little bit. So I think that's important, and you mentioned the budget process too, which is very dynamic. So is there, I know Sue has some good questions there, but is there and I don't know what this meeting you were talking about, did Chip interview before? Did he come in and pick up for Joe at some meeting?
No, Joe, we're referring back to 2020 when the board interviewed the 3 candidates for the 3 search committees. You interviewed Joe, Chip, and there was another candidate that you interviewed. That was back
I wasn't part of that, so I don't. Okay, now that makes sense. Okay, thanks for clearing that up.
Sue or Lori, do you remember who the third fellow was?
I thought it was Kate.
Oh, I didn't think
so.
it was
No, it was
Abe.
another. Oh, it was
Nasdaq.
It was Randy.
Again, I could describe him to you.
Yeah.
I can't
Lee is
remember
the
his
Nasdaq.
name.
Yeah.
Can I ask a
But,
question?
no,
Go ahead, Lori, finish, and then Rob would like to ask a question.
Well, right.
yeah,
Kate was
absolutely. I was
superintendent.
just, I thank you, Joe, for saying what you said, because you kind of helped me to articulate I completely understand it was a long time ago that we had these interviews and we want to ask these questions, and I think it's everything that was stated was great to get people on board, and I just don't see the alternative. I think we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot if we do not accept Joe's recommended replacement for Chip, who we did have that opportunity to interview, who has not only the letter that indicates that they have a designated team for this search, but they have a brochure with a little bit of a background on who that search team is, and the other successful searches that they've had. I think sometimes you have to trust in the process, and in this case, unfortunately, Joe is part of the process because he's no longer to be able to be with us. I find it much more concerning. I think those questions can be answered after we move forward with the process, get that salary with the meeting tomorrow night with Chip, and move forward. Soon after we decide to do that, I think it can be detrimental if we take time to feel it out, see if we like it, and then if we determine not to, what that does to the timeline. I think that I find that extremely concerning, and I think that is most concerning above everything else that's been mentioned.
Rob?
Do you think the state would give us a hard time for starting our 3rd year with an interim superintendent?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
The issue would be
Yeah.
finding an interim and then having, again, I think a segue from Scott to an interim
Yes.
with a delay to another superintendent.
And the transition in and of itself.
It wouldn't be anybody who could at that time move the district forward. It would be somebody who would be supporting what is going on. I think it would be more of a maintenance kind of position, just to support the board in looking for a superintendent that they would like to have in place for the RHAM community.
I can only speak for myself. I remember interviewing them. It wasn't that I didn't like Chip, I just liked Joe better. And, I'll be honest with you, Chip would have been my second choice. So, in my opinion, if you remove Joe from the equation, odds are it's going to be Chip and 2 other guys. And I know personally I would choose Chip. So, I mean, if that's who Joe is recommending, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, if he trusts him enough to teach his classes, I think he probably trusts him enough to finish his search, but.
Agree. Yes, ditto.
If it's any help just from my own personal interactions with Chip, I know both Joe and Chip very well, and I've worked both with both of them. With Chip, I was years ago, there were about 10 of us as high school principals who got together quarterly. We hired a facilitator, and we'd meet at ACES in North Haven for professional development. Chip was one of those individuals, so I got to know him pretty well there, and I can certainly speak for his character. And the fact that he was part of a small group that went out of our ways to hire somebody to do constant professional development with us. I was actually with Chip on the morning of the Newtown tragedy. He was principal at Newtown High School. We were together in North Haven that morning, and he got the call that something was happening and had to go back. And since then, he became one of the key school safety representatives in the state. Joe actually played that same role, and so they both had some similarities there. I went on to work with Chip. He was an assistant chair for me at one of my MEAS visits that I chaired. So I got to work with him very closely and found his help to be invaluable. So, on a personal level, I can speak very highly of him. And my experiences with him have not been on a friend basis, but more of a professional basis. And he's always done a great job. I can speak for him there.
I think it's very sad to hear about Dr. Arati, and certainly that has left us in a predicament that we would have never guessed we would have been in at this point. First and foremost, we want to wish Dr. Arati the best, and wish him a speedy recovery and good health. And for us, as outgoing or incoming board members, certainly the number one goal would be to put the superintendent who is effective and has good leadership in place, regardless of the agency we use. I think the Board of Education will have a tough decision, and hopefully have good candidates no matter who is in charge of the search. Candidates are going to apply to RHAM regardless, because RHAM's a good place to work, because it's a great school system and that is known in Connecticut and certainly outside of Connecticut. And I think people are going to be drawn here no matter what. It's just who you want guiding the ship. But I think the Board of Education should do that guiding regardless of who is at the forefront of that.
Kathleen, Joe again, could you render an opinion on it? I mean, I looked at your leadership, business, and it's okay if you want to say you don't want to, but I think you as the board chair should have a say. And I'd love to hear your opinion on what you think is the best course of action, because I'm clearly, even though I'm outgoing, my opinion from what I've heard so far is to not delay this search. I just think that that's going to be detrimental to a lot of different reasons. But I do understand Sue's concerns, but I do think,
Let me just add one more thing. If we say yes tonight, I feel like if we wait, have an hour meeting in the future, in the next days, Monday or Tuesday, Friday, we have more negotiations. So let's just say he comes back and says, no, you're gonna be working with multiple teams. Well, we could say, well, we really would like to just work with one team. And I feel we have more negotiating power that way before we sign on the dotted line. It's just like anything with negotiation. So that's just, I'm just throwing that out there as well. But if we say yes tonight, doesn't matter what he says. We signed, we voted, and he's in.
Sue, I just want to say, from the literature that's in the packet, it looks like the team consists of him and 3 people, of which their CVs are included in the packet of information.
Who
I
were,
totally hear what you're saying. I totally hear what you're saying. And I think if we had more time, I love that idea of really, let's go back, let's revisit, it's been a while. I guess because I fall into the same opinion as Rob. Chip was my second choice. So when you take Joe out of the equation, so for me it's a little bit different because I'm coming from that perspective. But again, I don't think we're schlepping it with, a run-of-the-mill group, a large group. It looks like there's him plus 3 other people. It's not like we're going to be sifted through 15 different individuals. It's not like, I'm going to use an analogy here. It's not like going to the OBGYN with a group of 12 different doctors and they got to filter you around because you never know who's going to be in the delivery room. I don't think we're going to have that similar experience with that large of a team, according to the documents that are in this email that were sent over. Just saying, just as an FYI, to just draw your attention to that.
Lori, I love your metaphor.
Glad you can appreciate it.
Absolutely. And let's just leave it there. So I was asked my opinion, Joe, and my opinion is to move forward with Chip. I have high regard for Dr. Hardy. I worked for him. I know he would not put somebody in place that he did not trust, nor that he thought would do a job that would mirror what his expectations were. I think if Scott and the board are comfortable with Chip, that we should move forward. I think any delay at this time, I don't support. I understand Sue's questions, and to that degree, if we had more time, I would totally want to get all of those questions answered. I'm wondering if there's just a way to ask in those questions for Sue without there being another meeting. We can ask questions to anybody we're hiring, if that's okay. I think Sue does have some good questions, and I think the reason we picked Joe is for personalization. If we're just going to have one person from the team, and usually that's what it is they decide. And I know this might not be typical because we're bringing them in as opposed to had we started with them, we said this is the person that was going to be here. But if they could qualify that a little bit more, maybe it would resolve some of the questions. Other than that, that's my opinion.
Scott, do you have his phone number? Could you text him right now and ask him? Sue, is your specific question, Sue, that is Chip going to be our person? Is that your direct question?
So we can't hear you.
I didn't hear that.
Yep, sorry. Who is taking the lead, and is the team, how many searches is this team handling at one time?
Is it possible?
Absolutely. I can text him right now.
He might not be available right now.
I know he's negotiating.
Right, I was going to say, he might not be able to answer that right this second.
But I will text him right now.
I appreciate the willingness to do this, but if this is what the board votes, I'll be voting a different way and let the vote, majority rules. I understand the board concept here. So we can move forward if you all would like.
Well, I think we have an option to get some answers. So
right.
If we could
If we could get some answers, that's great, and maybe we move on, throughout the board meeting and then come back at the end and see if we can get the answers.
And so your questions are good ones. I think they're just the type.
Kathleen, the other question I have is why can't we decide what the salary is tonight? Does that typically come from the consultant?
Yeah, Joe, because what you're going to want, what the consultant's going to bring to the table is comparisons with similar districts, looking at the administrative salaries within the district, and kind of arriving at that sweet spot for what, because they know the lay of the land, and they know what people, where they might be coming from and what would be acceptable and what might be too low, what might be outrageously high. So, I definitely would want them to be steering that discussion with you guys, because, I don't have that information in my pocket, whereas they have all of that.
It will be key, especially if we're going to be looking, or the next Board of Education will be looking at sitting superintendents, because they're going to be looking to either make as much or more moving to another district. So it's got to be a salary that is going to draw good candidates. This Board of Education is only one that the superintendent, well, we are the Board of Education, but the towns we represent is a big deal when you're one superintendent. You have to go to Andover, Marlboro, and Hebron, and then have connections, not just with the elementary schools and the towns that are feeding in, but also with those communities, boards of finance. So the position for RHAM, although it is just a middle and a high school, and I hate to use the word just, but the obligations outside of school for a sitting superintendent for RHAM are huge and take up a lot of time outside of the school day as well. So the salary is important because you're asking somebody to give up a whole lot of time.
Are we gonna move forward and see if we can get answers?
Yeah, I would say maybe put this on hold and then we can come back to it. And
So we'll move to financials. And go ahead, Aaron, sorry.
Lily had to go home and finish her homework,
Yes.
but she handed me this piece of paper, and I'd like to read it. She said, "When it is convenient, can you please extend my congratulations to the members whose terms are up? Can you thank them on my behalf and tell them that it was a pleasure serving?"
That's awesome.
Who said that? Who?
That was from Lily.
Okay.
Our student rep, yes.
Yep.
Yes, very polite, and it's lovely to be on the board with her. Must be something her parents taught her. So financials, expenditure review report, and closure 10.2A.
Okay, so my understanding that some of you may not have had your packets delivered as of yet. An oversight on my part was the October expenditure report was not put into your packet, so the folks here have received a hard copy. I will make sure that the online version is updated with that. But as the packet would state, if you have one, it says that the net projected favorable position at the end of October 31st, 2021 is $14,641. We're in the process of receiving invoices for Magnet and BOAG based on the October 1st enrollment data that the state collects. So once we receive those invoices, there's a process in place to ensure that the students really are ours. And those are then processed for payment. So by December, board meeting, we'll have a better understanding of if there's availability in any of the tuition lines that we can move around for whatever unknowns might be coming our way. The capital improvement fund, the RFP was processed. And a purchase order was issued for Safe Warrant to do the work on the HVAC replacement for the high school locker at end and dinner rooms. Safe Warrant is in the process of currently working with RZ Designs to gain approval for materials that need to be purchased. The capital non-recurring fund is awaiting the closeout of the DL2 project. And the People Services Department is able to work on their excess cost, which updated as of today, got processed and filed for the December 1st submission date, so we're ahead of schedule on that. So hopefully, February, March timeline there, so we will have better understanding if and how our revenue will fall based on that submission. Are there any questions that I can answer to the board based on that submission?
Eva, yes. Do we know what our excess cost is going to be this year? Has the state given any numbers or anything? No. Okay. That's something for future Board of Education members to find out if it comes out, and the state is always delayed. And the other thing is the materials, are they delayed in any way?
No, so far so good. It's basically just, I forget the terminology that Commissioner Hopper told me that they're doing, but it's just basically making sure that everything that we ask for in the RFP matches up with what they're proposing, but, you know, everything should be on point, there should be no supply chain issues.
Any other questions besides mine?
Hearing none. The next on the packet is the RHAM Middle and High School Student Activity Report. The balances there total up to the bank balances, so it's looking well. The total available balance in all of the student activity accounts for both middle school and high school is $226,655. Are there any questions that the board may have on that portion?
I think Eva, it's important if there's a few new members on here, so you might just want to throw out a little bit of what the student activity account entails.
So student activity accounts are for the students, the classes to have, so any funds that are in a student activity account can only be used for the benefit of the student directly. So students will fundraise for these funds, so classes, like your class of 22, 23, the homecoming was a fundraising for the senior class so that they can do their senior activities. Many times when the graduating class leaves, they'll take the money and utilize it for their reunions later on. There are, historically here, the classes will donate back to the school, which has been lovely. One of the projects that we're hoping to get passed is a signage that many of the classes have, a digital LED sign for the school that will hopefully pass through the town's planning and zoning, so that, because many of the classes, previous classes have donated to that aspect. There are numerous items throughout the building that have been donated by classes, water fountains, display cases, and those types of things. We have ski clubs that they, both middle school and high school will go skiing. That's where they get their money from and pay for the skiing and the chaperones. Those are the types of items that you'll find in a student activity.
I think just to take off on that just a little bit, one of the testimony to, and speaks volumes about our student body, is our senior graduating class of 2021 actually donated significant funds to the juniors, sophomores, and freshmen, because during the pandemic they weren't able to do any fundraising. So although the seniors had a sizable amount in their student activity fund, the other classes did not due to the lack of fundraising. So the last year's exiting seniors really did a kind gesture and provided a significant amount of their remaining funds to the other classes so that they would be ahead of the game as they move into their senior years and plan things like proms and outings that tend to cost a lot of money.
Are there any questions on the student activity account? Okay, so hearing none, the final item that I'm speaking about is the food service monthly sales and expenditure report. As I reported last month, it seems to be trending better. More of the students are
I'm sorry, just wondering if, when Dr. Saruski is here, what is it looking like for the 8th grade to take their trip this year?
There is no DC trip this year, but there is, the teachers are looking at providing at least a one-day trip to something like Holiday Hills or something fun for the 8th grade to have sort of a memory from. Yeah, that's very good. The issue we're running into is the same as usual, busing and staffing.
And with, like the Washington trip being an overnight, we're really purposely avoiding any overnight trips because you plan them, and then if travel becomes impossible, we haven't because we haven't done any trip, but before the pandemic, when things started to get canceled, we ran into significant challenges with all the money that had been paid to the companies, and
I remember that.
yeah, it's
That was a root canal.
yeah, we're trying to avoid those issues moving forward.
Yeah, the only reason I was asking, because I noticed there was money in activity for a DC trip and a DC trip stay back, so I didn't know.
And that money would typically be used if the trip wasn't run to fund other field trips to subsidize.
Yep. Sorry about that. Also, with the fruits and vegetables, are there some other things that students can get if there's no fruits and vegetables? I'm sure they're all lined up for the broccoli.
Right, so it's not that, not that actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It's not that we're not getting the fruits and vegetables, the, DOD, so the Department of Defense provides us with the commodities of fresh fruits and vegetables. The people that the state of Connecticut has contracted with, I think is Harper Provision Company, is there because of their, staff shortages, can only supply each of the districts on a monthly basis. So that in turn makes the district or Whitson's, contract with a different vendor to try to get the fresh fruits and vegetables. So we're not getting that at this point, really, that we can normally do through the promotion. So yes, that adds an added expense to the district, unfortunately, on that portion. But yes, everybody's supposed to be getting their fruits and vegetables, so it may not be the fruit or vegetable that we may have in the menu around for that week, but, so there are some adjustments that happen on a daily basis.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, we have the committee reports, facilities. Joe, Rob, or Mike, do you want to report out following our last meeting?
Sure. The last meeting we had, which was November 10th.
Yep.
10th. We talked about, we had Rich Clarko on the call with us, and basically talked about the issues we have with the high school baseball field, and some discussion was, Mr. Clarko was entertaining with some other people about bringing in some additional sources of expertise, try and get some more ideas and remedies on the drainage on that field. And then we talked about the comp field situation. There was lengthy discussion on that, but nothing was really of substance. I don't think we decided on anything on that, waiting for the new board members to come in. But basically the consensus on the vote in the field was, what do we do next? So we're trying to figure out, well, the discussion was, what do the towns want? What does the taxpayers want? They didn't seem to, I personally don't think they understood the issues, but again, that's where we're at. We're kind of in limbo. There's Rob's leaving, I'm leaving. Mr. Clarko is semi-retired. Scott's leaving. I think the board is in the, Mike is probably going to be carrying the torch, Mike Morris. But I think the board needs to, besides the superintendent search and a budget that's coming up, you got to figure out what the process is of how we're going to fix these fields, if in fact the community wants to do that. So I think that was pretty much it, Scott. Rob, if you had anything else you wanted to add, if I missed something, but wasn't, I think those are our discussion points.
I'd like to thank the facilities subcommittee. You guys did a lot of work, at least in the 4 years that I've been here, and I want to thank the Board of Education for putting the turf field referendum up for vote. Unfortunately, it didn't go through. Personally, for me, it's a disappointment, and I know it is for other members of the board, but something still needs to be done, and that would be a big challenge for the next facilities subcommittee.
I would echo that. I'm the person who always says I'm not the athlete on the team. But I did feel for people who had spent so much of their time in labor getting that referendum, and was sorry that it didn't pass. But I think there was some miscommunication, when I say that. I at least at a meeting I was in Marlboro, an election night, people were thinking it was 3.5 for each town, or whatever the referendum vote was. I don't think that was the case. That's a real miscommunication, because that's a huge sum of money.
I know Scott put out a pamphlet that addressed all that. I know we had several conversations within the Board of Education before we put it to vote with referendum about
Oh,
what
I
we
get
do.
it. I know we communicated. I'm
Oh,
just saying
yeah,
it didn't,
yeah.
that was a serious miscommunication. They're not understanding that was, if that was a rumor out there.
Yes, something definitely went wrong. It's a shame, especially being at a turf field this past weekend with the JV football team, and seeing such a nice field, and knowing that our students were playing on a turf field, a well-groomed field at some other school, but don't have it here. It's a shame.
Kathleen, again, I just to say thank you to you and Rob and all the board for pushing that through, as Jean mentioned, but you had an integral part in doing, as a sports booster member, not a Board of Education member, you and Rob really got, the people to try and vote for this. So you guys really did a great job. So it's to be commended on your efforts. So thank you.
It's a team effort, Joe. Finance and audit, compliance and insurance. We don't have a meeting till November 18th, and it will be a combined facilities and audit and finance and audit.
Although I think we're going to have to cancel that meeting because we have another meeting that takes precedence over that. So we have there's another meeting that has to. So we'll have to reschedule that.
Okay.
And I think right now we're still, I don't think we're far enough in the budget to really even start to have those conversations. So I think it's going to be better when we later on.
Great. Negotiations, we didn't meet. We don't have any right now. We finished, right there. Are there any upcoming?
No, there's no more negotiations until next year when the administrators will be beginning of the fall, or the summer.
Policy was canceled, but that meeting was supposed to be on October 19th.
Right now, we have no policies that are scheduled for an update, so we don't have, the administration doesn't have anything to bring forward at this point. We just did the fraud policy. So right now, we don't have any policies.
I have a question regarding policy. Has Kate gone through to look at all of our policies to see if they're on track, if they're updated in a timely fashion, or if anything needs to be, not that the administration needs to, but have we looked at all of them? We've got so many. Just wondering if they're all in time.
We work with Shipman and Goodwin for a student, and we haven't anything. I haven't worked with Kate on that, though.
Well, I don't know if we need to.
Yeah,
I just think of Kate all the time.
Right.
Board of Education policies. And then, he's kind of came, but Judy's not here. I don't know if she shared anything with you.
No, she did not. No.
Did Judy share anything with any of the other board members regarding either ESCON or Kane? So that's it. Did you hear that?
I have not heard back from Chip. I'm assuming that means that he's deep in negotiations as we speak, and so we can continue on. We have a few more items. We have public comment, and then we have the other informational items. We'll do that, and we'll have executive session.
Public comment, Hank Fernando over Marlboro Community Engagement and Attendance. Go ahead.
Okay.
This sounds better if you read it.
Hebert Andover Marlboro Community Engagement and Attendance at Board of Ed public meetings is welcome. The public comment segment of the meeting agenda is set aside so the Board of Ed may receive public comments. Procedurally, public remarks will be limited to 3 minutes and citizens will be asked to identify themselves. Because the Board of Ed is limited by the Freedom of Information Act to discussing only matters on the agenda, the Board of Ed is not permitted to engage in discussion of the comments presented. Are there any public comments that anyone would like to make?
I have a public comment I would like to make.
Sure.
Mary Rose Mead from Hebron, Connecticut, and I would just like to thank all of the members of the Board of Education who will be leaving their tenure on the board and thank them for their support of education in our town and all that they've done and all the incredible amounts of time that they've put into that. It is most appreciated by parents and staff, and we are just really grateful for the time that you've put in. And thank you also to all of those who will stay on and serve in the future as well. We really do appreciate the time. We know how much time it takes, and we're really grateful for your dedication, and that is my comment.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Any other public comment?
Okay. Information items, we have a calendar of events for each of the middle and the high schools and the discipline report from the middle and high school. Any questions or comments on those? Well,
You sell a lot of pies? Mike, did you sell a lot of pies?
Couple hundred.
couple hundred.
Right.
So I have not heard back from Chip. So I still need guidance on this issue. I guess sounds like if I'm understanding it correct, it's either asking me to go back and have try to schedule a meeting with Chip shortly within the next week and a half or so, unless someone wants to make a motion otherwise.
So
I have another suggestion.
Go ahead, Joe.
Sure.
Sorry, Kathleen. So, why don't we ask, I'd like to make the motion that we take this vote tonight, but before I think that we could make the motion to ask the question and get the answer, or maybe we dictate to Chip and say, look, we want you as our point guy, and if that can't be a guarantee, then it needs to come back to the board, or something along that effect. That way we kind of get the question answered immediately, but we still keep the ball moving. Does that make sense?
So motion to move forward with the caveat that the questions regarding who's going to particularly do it from CES and how many.
I would just make the question that Chip be our guy, that if that's his concern and other members' concern, I just think we can't afford to lose the time. We're at a crossroads, and I think that if Joe, I would agree with everything you said, and if Joe Girardi has been our guy, he's put his name on, and the label on this guy, and he's vetted him and trusts him. I think that's good enough for me, because I think the alternative is not good. So that's my prognosis on it, but I think that not to murky the waters, but I think if we just say that, Joe, you need to be our guy, then I think that answers Sue's question, maybe. But if anybody else has a question, that's my thought process. So maybe I didn't make that very clear, but I think it's critical that we make a decision tonight.
So what's the motion, Joe? I can respect your suggestion. Can you make the motion so we can hear it?
Sure, I'll make the motion that we move forward with Chip. I don't know his last name, I'm sorry. What was it, Scott? Duvay's for superintendent search with the understanding that Chip is going to be the lead person for the RHAM Board of Education, and he'll be the lead.
Second.
Any discussion?
And you gotta come back.
But doesn't that disrupt the timeline over?
The timeline wasn't disrupted for having an hour meeting in the next week and a half. The timeline still remains the same, according to Scott.
So I'm confused by the motion, maybe someone can clarify this. We're making a motion to say he has to be the lead.
I think the board would like one particular person to defer to. Is that what you're thinking, Sue, that you want? That was one of the selling points with Joe, is that it wasn't a huge thing. We knew, to go back to Lori's OBGYN metaphor, he didn't buy into a group. And
Yes,
not knowing who you might get that day.
It was Joe. You have one person you're working with. It was Joe. We all enjoyed that, working with one person. You don't even know if Joe had people working with him or not. We didn't even care. He was just our main contact. He was the face.
And how do you think Chip will?
Well, I guess I need just some clarification. So I'm assuming am I correct in my understanding that you want Chip to be the conduit to work with the Board of Education? It doesn't mean that the other folks in the team aren't doing some of the work, but when it comes down to meeting with the RHAM board, having discussions with the RHAM board, Chip is the person that is the contact, the face that you guys see, and the person that you talk to. It may be
that is my intent. That's
right.
Exactly what I'm saying. That's my intent.
So he may have people who do some of the legwork, but he is essentially the person that, and Sue, I want to make sure that it's clear for you, because you will still be here. I think it's important for you to work.
Yes, that's Joe's intention is definitely what I want. I want one person to be the face to us and to be working directly with us.
Okay. Did you have a question regarding the motion? Are you okay?
No, just the spelling of his last, is it Dumais?
D-U-M-A-I-S.
So I have moved forward with Chip Dumais for the superintendent search with the understanding he will be the lead person for the RHAM Board of Education.
Is that right, Sue? Is that what you're agreeing to? The motion?
Yes, I seconded that motion that Joe
You're
made.
okay. I just was clarifying because she reread it, that's all.
Yep.
Any other discussion? Call a vote. Mary? Jean? Bob?
I'm gonna abstain.
Eric? Joe?
Yes.
Mike? Is he gone?
Yeah, you have to take off that 7 years.
Okay. Sue?
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes.
Lori?
Abstain.
I'm gonna abstain too. Because I'm not gonna be here. Yes. We have
So,
enough?
Kathleen, can you just read the yeses and the nos and the abstain?
Yes, I can. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 yeses. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 abstentions. Judy and Mike are not present.
So that carries the vote. We've got a majority.
We have 5.
Okay,
Motion carries.
I will reach out to, obviously I have already, but obviously he's busy, so more than likely, it'll be tomorrow morning. And then I'll communicate with everyone as soon as I hear back from them and have a chance to have that discussion. Yes, I'll tell you what we'll do that.
Just so I understand it, we needed at least 6 people to vote. We had 9, including 4 abstentions. So the 5 yeses carried.
Correct.
Thank God.
So I think at this time, we're going to close our regular meeting and head to executive session.
So there's a separate link for executive session, correct? And then we'll come back into the regular meeting after that. So I'll ask everyone to go into executive session, and then I can fill you in on.
Just need a motion.
Okay, yeah.
A motion to go in executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
And then we're going to invite Mr. Leslie.
Invite interim
Can't leave him
superintendent.
out, yes.